God has blessed me beyond measure, and I've had a great life, and I want to be remembered not as a great fisherman. I guess I'd like on my tombstone, I did this, I did this, I did that, and in spite of all those distractions, he still lived for Jesus.
Welcome to another episode of Stuttering Your Way to Success with me, Erik Weir, and my special guest today, Hank Parker. We've been good friends for probably 15 years now.
Yeah,
I've been fishing with him in Louisiana, in Georgia, North Carolina, and I can tell you, if he can help me catch fish, he can help anybody catch fish. No doubt about it. We've had so much fun together. So what got you into fishing in the first place?
Well, let me first of all go back and tell you were a quick study. We went on about 7 or 8 fishing trips together, and you were really green on that first one. But by that last trip, you picked it up pretty good, man. You're doing great. You caught a huge Jack Crevalle, which is the pullingest fish pound for pound in the ocean, and you caught that thing on bass tackle. So pat yourself on the back.
Well,
you did
you.
good.
I had some good coaching. I do remember hooking you one time. I'm like, ooh, I guess, is that a party foul? Get you with a hook. Now, we were fishing with whopper ploppers one time. We were doing the topwater casting in Louisiana, if I recall.
That's right.
In B.A.S., Louisiana. And we caught, was it over 100 in one episode?
It was the craziest thing. It was the first time anybody had ever used those whopper ploppers, and the redfish were just going nuts over them. And we did. We were there for, we actually fished 2 days. We were there 2.5 days, but we caught over 100. And they averaged about 30 pounds a piece. So it wasn't like we're catching little bitty fish. It took 15 minutes to get one in the boat once you hooked him. So
yeah, I remember looking for a knife, wanting to cut the line a few times. I'm like, this is a lot of work. What is going on here? So what? I mean, you're a professional fisherman. You've won multiple Bass Masters. I could read all the things you've accomplished. It's just you're the top in your industry of hunting and fishing, entertaining, and representing your faith, giving back to others. I mean, you're a person I have a lot of respect for. But what got you into fishing, and what started it?
You know, that's something that it was just a magical moment for me. A lot of people talk about love at first sight or that sort of thing, and I guess that's what fishing was for me. It was bigger than anything that I'd ever done. It meant more to me. You know, a lot of kids like to go to the circus or the carnival or go ride the roller coasters or Ferris wheel. Man, just take me fishing. Let me go to a pond. Give me a bobber and a pack of red worms and let me go fishing. I was more alive and more thrilling and more fulfilled when I was on a creek, on the lake, a pond. It didn't matter, man. It made me come alive, and it was just something that got me from the very first time I ever went.
I remember the first time I went fishing with you. We started late by fishing standards, like 10 a.m., because I was driving up from another part of the state, and I came up and talked to you. I said, "What you been doing all morning?" Good. I've been fishing. Like, what do you mean? You go fishing before you go fishing? So I believe he really does love fishing. Yeah.
It used to drive my wife crazy. I'd be going on a fishing trip for a bass tournament, which I did for a living, and be gone for 2 weeks, come home, be home 2 days, and leave. She said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going fishing." Wow. You know, it's not for a tournament. It's just because I love it.
That's true. That's fantastic. So you've been fishing with handicapped veterans. You take children fishing. You introduce people. Tell me one or two stories of a celebrity or somebody we may know who you fish with. What was that like?
You know, the celebrities is really funny. I fished with Dale Earnhardt. I fished with Larry Bird. I fished with Tony Dungy. Tony was different. I fished with Bo Jackson, and these guys hate to lose. And you know, you think about that. I could never compete with Dale Earnhardt on a racetrack.
Right.
I could never compete with Bo Jackson on a baseball field or a football field. And Larry Bird would have killed me on a basketball court. But yet they thought they were getting in my boat and they're going to outfish me. They don't like to lose. And I mean, it just really is funny. Bird and I had a ball. I caught a big fish right off the bat, and I ragged him so bad he was trying to knock it off my line. You know, but we had so much fun. And then Bo Bo really, man, he wanted to win. So I laid out about 9 lures that I was going to fish with and rods. And I said, Bo, what you want to fish with? And he looked at every lure I had, and he named everything I had on.
Oh, my word.
He wanted exactly what I had. So, but he was a great sport and incredible fisherman. Good times. And you look back, we're doing a YouTube show now, and it's called a Rewind. So I'm looking back at those old shows, and it's so much fun to see those guys. And of course, Dale Earnhardt and I was great friends. I miss him so bad, but it's fun to look back and look at him smile, and we had such a good time. And it's the fishing show. You know, I've been doing it now 39 years, and I still love it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I remember we were on a boat one day fishing, and I've got a habit to just ask questions. I'm curious. I'm like, Hank, what are you going to do when you retire? And he go, Erik, I don't know what you do when you retire from fishing. That was one of the funniest things
I might get a job.
Yeah, you know? I might get a job. I don't want to have to do that. That sounds crazy, man. So you know, fishing is one of those things where you have time. There's strategy. You have to react to the environment. You have to change lures, change bait, change techniques, and yet at the same time you can have community at the same time. So how do you think that fishing builds relationships?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, I started my show, and I started my show right after I won the second world championship, and everybody assumed my show was going to be on tournament strategies and how to read water and get pretty technical on how to use certain baits and look at fishing from a tournament perspective. And I didn't do that at all. I looked at fishing for what it's really about. Fishing's about camaraderie. It's about sharing. It's about enjoying God's great outdoors that He's blessed us with. And it's about having a good time. And tournament fishing's not like that at all, because you got 5,000 people out there competing for about 10 jobs. And that's a very competitive environment. So you have to be on your A game, and you have to push yourself, and you put yourself in a position that you can be competitive against the best in the world on different bodies of water. So there's a lot of demands. But fishing itself is absolutely the greatest sport that I've ever been involved in, and it gives you a chance with a child, for example. We all, as parents, and I have 5 children and 19 grandchildren, we all push to instill in them values, principles, and to help build their character. And a lot of times we'll do that on the way to school in the morning. When it doesn't fit. They got 10,000 things on their mind.
Right.
You're driving in traffic, and you're trying to force feed. But you can take them fishing and get out there and get in that environment and just relax and let them become one with you, win their confidence, and just create an environment that's conducive to communicating. And you can do so much more. I look back at my own kids, and some of the greatest moments we've ever had were not days we caught great numbers of fish, but that we just had time. And we're in that environment that it just removed all the barriers. They didn't feel that they had to give me answers. It was just all subtle, calm, and just a great environment to communicate.
That's fantastic. Well, you're a great communicator. I know that I've been one of the first things I did is we worked something with the FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and you had the Hank Parker shoot. I was the very first one.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not sure what number. I think we have
12,
one.
number 12.
Number 12.
Yeah.
We have one in a couple of weeks, and I can thank you for the auction items there. I didn't realize that when you buy some of those, you end up in Africa, and you thought the auction was the expensive part. Turns out it wasn't. You know, this is what you did in Africa. It was a lot more expensive, and getting there and getting back. But what memories it created? I can say out of that event came times that I had with my children on the safari or on hunting or fishing expeditions, and I just wouldn't have had otherwise. And you couldn't have convinced me otherwise. I just didn't even think about that. But what you said is so true in building relationships and having memories that you think about. Is there a fishing story that to you that just comes back as, man, this is the fishing story for me? There's got to be one.
I won the Bassmaster Classic, which is the World Championship, and it's a life-changing event. When you win the Bassmaster Classic, you have an opportunity to make a lot of money, and it's a life-changing for me, especially because I came from a background without a lot of money, and then all of a sudden I had all this opportunity. Well, I did that, won that first Bassmaster Classic only my second year on tour. So I didn't have full appreciation for it. Well, then that was in 1979. And in 1989, I won it the second time. And that I knew how important it was then. I knew how meaningful it was, and I had already established myself with a lot of great manufacturers, so I knew it was going to be more lucrative for me, and it was going to be my springboard to retire from competitive fishing and go back and spend time with my kids, which I had neglected to do like I wanted to do for so many years. So no one had ever won, and I'll set this up for my fishing story. No one had ever won what they call the Grand Slam, and that would be a qualifying tournament. That'd be Bass Angler of the Year. That'd be a super tournament and Bassmaster Classic. No one had ever done that, so they called that the Grand Slam. So I wanted to be the first guy to ever do that. Well, you only have one opportunity per year for 3 of the 4 events, so I had never won a super tournament, which was their big money tournament. And that particular year that I set that quest, it was on Lake Lanier right out of Atlanta, Georgia. And Gary Klein from Oroville, California, he jumped out to a big lead. And the last day, I caught the biggest stringer of the tournament. So Ray Scott, who was the founder of B.A.S.S and the weighmaster, he just went on. Hank Parker, Denver, North Carolina, the biggest string. Let's hold them up, and went nuts. And we held them up and walked up and down the stage. And I took the lead by 10 pounds and 9 ounces.
Wow.
So Gary Klein came in, and he said, all right, Gary, you got to have 10-10 to win, 10-9 to tie. Put them on the scales. They didn't hold them up. They didn't do anything. He put them on the scales. He had 10-10. I lost by 1 ounce. But lessons you learn the hard way are very valuable. That's a title that gives you boasting rights within your fraternity of other anglers.
Right.
It doesn't pay any money.
Right.
It's just a title.
Right.
And so it worked out good because the very next year it was on the St. Johns River in Florida, the super tournament was, and I won it. But then 3 years later, we got the Bassmaster Classic, the life-changing financial tournament that just makes everything, puts you in a whole different level, was on the James River in Richmond, Virginia, Deja Vu. Jim Bitter jumps out to a big lead. I come in the last day with the biggest string of the tournament. Ray Scott, the weighmaster. Hank Parker, Denver, North Carolina, the biggest string of the tournament. Let's hold them up. Nope, Ray, I'm not going to hold them up. He grabbed me by the head, put his mic down, and he said, look, it's going to be a lot more dramatic if you'll hold these fish up. I said, Ray, it's enough drama for me like it is. Put them on the scales. So I finally, reluctantly, I talked him into putting them on the scales, and he did, and I won by 2 ounces.
Oh, wow.
Had I held those fish up and let all those water drops drop off of them, I'd have never won that tournament. So
Oh, wow.
lessons you learn the hard way come back. So
Don't
that's
hold
my
the
favorite
fish
fishing
up.
story.
Oh, wow.
Put them on the scales, I'm not holding them up.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, you also hunt, too.
Yes, sir.
You hunt turkeys and... Tell me about that. I've had some funny stories with turkeys myself and hunting, and the calling. There's an art form to it.
It really is,
tell me
and
about
it's
that.
the most fulfilling and addictive sport there is, I think, is turkey hunting. But I'm one of very few people that I've killed the World Slam. I finished it last year in Mexico, where I killed the ocellated turkey, but I've killed the World Slam with a bow.
Oh, wow.
And we got it all on video. We've made TV out of it. So it's pretty cool that I can say I'm one of just a handful of people in the world that have done that. And I did it I had a guy that questioned my credentials one day. So I wanted to pull that off, and I told him, and this is braggadocious, and I don't really go for all that, but I really wanted to kind of shut this guy down. And so I'm the only sportsman alive that's ever won a world championship fishing title, killed a Boone and Crockett white-tailed deer and a Pope and Young white-tailed deer, Boone and Crockett elk, and a Pope and Young elk, and the World Slam of wild turkey. So with the bow.
Word! Wow!
So nobody will ever top that. I mean,
you're done now, right?
That'll be a legacy that I'll carry that
got-
title. I
you
think
got
I'll be
that
the
one.
only guy in the world to ever do that. So that's pretty cool.
That's a big deal.
I mean, it's really not, but it's pretty cool to be able to say that when somebody says, "Well, what's your credentials? You're a fisherman. Why are you hunting?"
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Bring it on.
No doubt. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. So you have an event, the Hank Parker Shoot. Tell me about that, and why do you do it?
Yeah, boy, that's a great event. It's a sporting clay event we have over at Frank Harrison's place in Lancaster, South Carolina. It's a sporting clay shoot that we raise money for the FCA, for Cleve McClary Ministries. Cleve is a wounded Vietnam vet that preaches the gospel. Tim Lee, a wounded Vietnam veteran that preaches the gospel. And Emmaus Road Partners, who take the gospel to businesses and help them establish. Those are the four charitable events or recipients of this event. And we started out just to help FCA. And that's where I came from. I spoke at the FCA event last night in Nashville. But a friend of mine asked me once, I never was a real athlete. I squirrel hunted and dove hunted, and those two-a-day football practices were right in the middle of squirrel season. There wasn't any way, you couldn't fish. And so no, that wasn't me. So a friend of mine asked me one day, so what involvement do you have with the FCA? And I said, I wasn't a jock, and I've never been involved. He said, well, do you realize that they're one of the only organizations that's taken the gospel of Jesus Christ to public schools? I said, no, I didn't realize that, but I need to be involved. And that was about 17 years ago. I got involved. We did the first shoot, and we raised $30,000. We thought that was awesome. And I think last year we raised a little over 130. So
that's fantastic. That's great.
It's a great event.
Great event. So tell me about what happens at the event. I mean, teams come and they shoot, and you share.
We have a great time. First of all, we just started doing this about 5 years ago. We have an incredible speaker that will come in on Thursday night, and then the shoot is then on Friday. So this year we've got an awesome guy. He's an author. Who's Eating Your Pie? Stuttering Your Way to Success. Host of He's going to be our Thursday night speaker, and I'm anxious. We've had Frank Harrison, the president of Coca-Cola.
No, absolutely.
And so we've had a lot of great speakers.
Sure.
And so we got a really great speaker.
This big shoes to fill there on Thursday. We'll see
that's interesting. Then we have all kind of great food. We have incredible auction, silent auction items. And I usually speak and give my testimony at lunch. And then everybody has all these competition. We have a flurry shoot, which is the most fun thing you can do.
It is a tremendous amount of fun. No doubt about that.
5-man team, and I mean, they're going in you're shooting. And
it's so fun.
It is so much fun. And so this year they're going to have an Annie Oakley, which is a neat concept. Hutz Eckerson, who is a NFL retiree, is helping us put that on. So
great.
We have a lot of celebrities there. Ryan Suckup, the winning field goal kicker of the Tampa Bay Bucks 2 years ago or 3 years ago when they won the Super Bowl. Ryan kicked so he usually comes out and and has a part in it. So
that's fantastic.
Big deal.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy. So you've gone from hunting to fishing. Now NASCAR. What got you into NASCAR?
Oh, Lord, you sound like Dale Earnhardt Jr. They killed me. My son was on his podcast the other day, and they just ripped me apart. But I loved it. We got started racing go-karts, and then Dale Earnhardt and I were great friends, and we deer hunted together. So he and Dale Jr., I went to pick up some lunch, and they were all sitting on the front porch of my little house down there on my farm in Union. And so while I was gone, Dale Jr. and Hank Jr. got talking racing. So Dale Sr. gave Hank one of Dale Jr. street stock cars,
Oh, my
unbeknownst to me.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
that was kind of the start. That's a drug addict, as a pusher.
Right.
He gave him that addictive NASCAR, and that's what got it started. And then they were having so much fun. I thought, well, I'm going to be a part of it. So I raced late models, and my wife would take my kids, and they would say it was not if Daddy wrecks, it's when he wrecks. When he wrecks, he's not going to get hurt. Yeah, he'll be okay. So,
how fast are you going?
We've raced a little. I raced a late model super sport car, and we come Concord Motor Speedway, which does not exist now, which is a shame. It was just an awesome speedway. It didn't have a turn 2. You come off of turn 1, and it's just a dog leg down the backstretch to go into 3. So you'd come off of turn 1 doing about 60 miles an hour, maybe 55, depending on the wear of your tires. But you go into turn 3 doing about 140.
Oh.
So you'd really light it up down that backstretch through that dog leg. It was just a hoot to race. I mean, it was. It's an adrenaline rush like nothing else. It's exciting.
You said something just in passing that I haven't thought about, during the condition of your tires. How often do you have to change your tires in a race?
Oh, it's amazing. It makes a difference after. I raced two bush races. I raced one in Rockingham, North Carolina, and I raced one in Martinsville, Virginia. And in Rockingham, North Carolina, after 2 laps, and if you're not experienced, I wrecked bad there. I wrecked really bad there. And if you're not experienced, you don't realize. I mean, you run and you hit your marks and you get in the corner and you do everything right, and that car sticks on the first lap, sticks on the second lap. On the third lap, your tires have already given up. You can't run it in there as hard. But I didn't know that. I learned that really good in the little Rockingham race, and I moved the turn 2 wall about 3 or 4 inches.
Oh my word!
It was not good.
But
your tires give up on you, and that's what. When Hank Jr. raced, we raced together a lot at Concord, and they had a big 10 series, and I could out-qualify him. I ran a big carburetor, and a lot of times I'd out-qualify him. It'd take him about 5 laps so he'd be passing me.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Then it'd take him about 20 more, and he'd be lapping me. He'd always wave at me. Hey, Dad, in the mirror,
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Wow, that's fantastic. So you're in NASCAR, you're hunting. I mean, so what's next for you? What gets you excited today?
Well, you wrote a book, and I'm going to write me a book, From Rags to Fishing to Riches.
Okay.
To racing to rags. I came full circle.
I wasn't expecting that.
Oh yeah. I
I'm drinking coffee over here.
You can make a small fortune racing if you start with a large one.
That's right.
It won't take you long.
It won't take you long, right?
Sir.
That's good plan in there, right? That's fantastic. It's fantastic. So what do you want to be remembered as?
I want to be a professional grandpa going forward. That's where I'm at
19
now.
grandkids, right?
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
But more than anything in my whole life, it's all about Jesus Christ. I started with nothing. I've been blessed. I was a high school dropout. I had a bad attitude. I had nothing whatsoever going for me. And I got saved when I was 22 years old. And you look at life and you look at your circumstances and you have a lot of regrets and it's frustrating to try to get a job with no education. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about any of that once I got saved. I forgot about, Jesus takes our past away. It's all gone. He wipes it out. Doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter. He covers all that. It's gone. He don't even remember it anymore. Mm-hmm. And he gave me that ability. I didn't think about being a dropout. I didn't think about I didn't have a chance. I just acted as if I had a doctorate degree in whatever I wanted to do. And I just took whatever door was open, I just went through it. Mm-hmm. And God blessed me beyond any measure. And My favorite thing now is sharing the gospel. I said I did that last night. I went to an FCA banquet in Nashville and just basically told my story. I'm kind of like the blind man that when Jesus made clay and put it on his eyes, told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. And the Pharisees questioned him. They said, well, tell us how this happened. I don't know how it happened. All I can tell you for sure is I was blind and now I see. Yeah. And that's kind of my story. And so I just tell what God has done in my life. And it's amazing as I look back on what God has given me and where I was. Who I was is definitely not who I am. I still have a long way to go. Sanctification is a big part of being a Christian. But God has blessed me beyond measure. And I've had a great life, and I want to be remembered not as a great fisherman. I guess I'd like on my tombstone, I did this, I did this, I did that. And in spite of all those distractions, he still lived for Jesus.
That's fantastic. That's great. That's great. If someone's listening to the show right now and they're a teenager or they're in their early 20s, they're like, I want to become an expert at angler. I want to learn. I want to kind of do what you did in this one area. What advice would you have for them?
Nowadays, it is so easy. There is so much. I have a YouTube show. Kevin Van Dam, one of the greatest fishermen in the world, has a YouTube show. You can watch all the major tournaments on YouTube and Twitter and all the different devices. There's so much information out there. And the growingest sport throughout America in high schools is high school fishing. It is on fire.
I was aware of that. Okay.
And I mean, not only in the South, man, it's a big deal in the West and the North and the East. And so high school fishing is growing, and it's a good thing to get involved and be a part of, and you can learn. And everybody learns more when you have a little competition and another competitor in the boat. You learn from each other. So I'd say get on a fishing team and go for it.
You talk a lot about learning, and being a student and being teachable. So who are your mentors now, and who were your mentors?
Well, my heroes are all pastors. I love pastors, and they make all kind of sacrifices. I never really had Blake Honeycutt was one of the first fishermen that really influenced me, and then the first world champion won the first Bassmaster Classic was Bobby Murray. And I noticed one thing about Bobby Murray. He could catch fish in cold water, warm water, shallow water, deep water, clear water. He was versatile. And most fishermen are not like that. Most fishermen they're great spinnerbait fishermen, or they're good deep water structure fishermen, or they're good jig fishermen, or they're good crankbait fishermen. But Bobby Murray could catch them on anything. And I said, that's who I want to be like. I want to be able, no matter what, a fishing lure is nothing but a tool. And you look at the water and you say, now what tool do I have that most effectively fish this structure? And you choose that bait like a tool. And that's what Bobby Murray did. And he was my mentor. And now I just try to watch these kids. We have forward-facing sonar. You can see the fish. You can see your lure. You can see the fish come and eat your lure. It's very controversial. There are a lot of people that hate it. It's kind of like being a lawyer 30 years ago when you read all the law books, and now an undergraduate student come out and he can Google and anything you learn, he can find it in 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's kind of this forward-facing sonar. Kids that have not got a lot of experience on the water, that should not be as far advanced, they're winning tournaments because they can read this forward-facing sonar more effective.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in our sport. It really is. And it's a lot of controversy surrounding it, but you're not going to stop it. All these people say, we got to outlaw it. That's like, okay, 20 years ago, the legal profession would have liked to have made sure you couldn't Google law.
Right, no doubt about that. So where do you see bass fishing going? I mean, from tournament fishing with this new technology and all that's happening.
It is. It's a growing sport, and conservation has been a very, very, very big part of all the tournament series. So catch and release. Nobody keeps a fish anymore.
Oh, interesting.
And our sport is in good shape. Our waters are in good shape. The Great Lakes are the cleanest they've ever been. They're producing more bass than they've ever produced in the history of the Great Lakes. So our waterways are good. High school fishing is on fire. So I think our sport's got a very, very bright future.
How do organizations like Ducks Unlimited, I mean, how do they give back, and how do they help the sport?
We all are in this thing together, and we all work closely together, whether it's the NWTF, National Wild Turkey Federation, whether it's Ducks Unlimited, whether it's Anglers for Clearwater, whether it's the Bass Research Foundation. All these conservation organizations work together. And Johnny Morris, by the way, Johnny Morris with Bass Pro Shops, he's probably contributed more to conservation than any other 10 combined people in the world.
Really?
So he's on top of it.
Wow.
And so we consult with him, and he's got a whole staff of people that just research what we need to do to preserve this waterway, what would make this fishery better. And so Johnny's on top of all of that. So that he's kind of the head and the kingpin of what we should do to follow suit to preserve our future and for my grandkids.
Fantastic. How did you go from being from fishing, being an angler, to starting a television show? Those had to be just different skill sets.
When I started fishing, I got in. I was kind of the second tier of professional fishermen. The whole sport started in 1968, and really got going about 1971. That's when they had the first World Championship. That's when it really came to life, about 71. Well, I got involved in 1976, so I was about 5 years after the foundation was really built. And the industry itself, the rod manufacturers, the lure manufacturers, the reels and the fishing line, they weren't sure whether we were going to be able to have the influence on the marketplace that we have had, as history shows. So it was hard to get a sponsor. It was hard to go to a Tom Bedell who owned Berkeley and say, hey, if you'll pay me this amount of money, I'll increase your sales. And so you had to win them over. Well, the only way you got notoriety in my day was to get enough relationship with outdoor and sports writers to do articles on you.
Okay.
So to self-promote, you didn't have a vehicle. So then television opportunity opened up. I thought, well, if I had my own television show, then I could promote myself every week.
Right.
And so that's was the outlook. And so I started in 1984. We shot our first season, and we're still going.
How does social media change things? Instagram and TikTok. How's it changed, and how are you adapting?
The outdoor television universe, like the Lead Dog, the largest outdoor television network, and I won't call their name, but they had a universe of around 60 million.
Oh, wow.
4 years ago. And today they've got a universe of about 19 million.
Wow.
It is dying. Linear television is being, the old Pac-Man deal.
Right.
It turned colors, and now it's eating linear television, and it's all social. So that's why we did a YouTube show. I still have a great base and a fan base and a viewer base, but they're all starting at about 48 years old and go through about 80.
Okay.
I don't have anybody 20 and 30 and early 40s. They're all on YouTube and social media and handheld devices. They're not cable guys. They're not sitting down on the recliner and the couch and watching television. It's amazing how our culture's changed. That's unless it's a live sport event, television is dying fast.
Wow. So you work with Ranger Boats and have for years. How did that relationship start?
With Blake Honeycutt, the fisherman from Hickory, North Carolina. He and Forrest Wood. Forrest was the founder of Ranger. Blake and Forrest were friends, and Blake became my hero catching big bass. He caught 138 pounds in Eufaula, Alabama in 1971, and I've never gotten over that. I saw that picture, but he had a Ranger boat, and the Ranger was written in stencil spray painted on the side of the boat
Come
with
on.
the phone number.
Okay.
And it cost about $1,300 rigged out.
Okay.
My new Ranger boat is $111,000.
No
So
way. Wow.
it's a lot different
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
1971 until
Yeah.
2023. It's amazing. But I built that relationship with Forrest Wood, who was the founder and the owner, and I've been able to maintain it. Johnny Morris now owns Ranger boats.
Okay.
And, but it's still number one. It started out first live well. You know, the first tournaments they killed all the fish, put them on a stringer.
Oh, wow.
And Ray Scott said, Forrest, we got to figure out a way to put a live well in a boat. Forrest figured out how to do it, and then it became catch and release, and you actually got a penalty if your fish was not alive.
Wow. Goodness gracious. So do you think do you think that fishing's changing? You know, by social media, I guess the NASCAR even affiliated with. What's the future of NASCAR? How's that changing as well?
NASCAR looks like they've had a bit of a resurgence here. They've been going down, and there's a lot of reasons for that. They don't have the Dale Earnhardt personalities that they've had in the past. NASCAR tries to keep it too clean. You don't have Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison fighting in the infield. All that they thought was going to be disastrous was the best thing that ever happened to them.
It's like WWF or something. Right?
Yeah, they took all that out, you know, and so they're mixing it up. All the cars tomorrow idea of every car being a cookie cutter car and engineers, and it's just not quite the same. NASCAR's got their challenges. There's no doubt, a lot of challenges. Fishing as a whole, I think, is very, very healthy, and I think it's going to continue to grow, but I think it's going to be carried by YouTube and different devices, and it's not going to be like it has been for me. So old dogs don't like to change.
That's
you know?
right. So it's monetized differently, you know, through YouTube now. And that's
Yeah,
what's responsible.
yeah, and that's where it's going. So.
Wow.
We live in a different world. I think a lot of this, to be able to have information is incredible, but if you don't totally understand that information, you didn't earn it, you didn't figure it out. You know, I can write an article on how to use this particular lure, but I figured that out, and I completely understand all the elements that involved. But if you read that on YouTube, if you read that on Facebook, or if you tweet that, you don't fully understand that. You read it and you comprehend it, but you don't have the total, complete understanding as if you had discovered that on your own. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of kids struggle. I helped my son Ben, who wanted to fish tournaments so bad, and I did him a disservice because I gave him information to the point that he didn't have to analyze it. He could just follow the instructions.
Right.
And he didn't learn it on his own. And so when things changed dramatically, he didn't understand what to do next.
Gotcha.
And that was a mistake on my part.
Gotcha. Wow. So when I watch your shows sometimes, I've seen you more recently. You'll hunt with a veteran. You'll take a veteran hunting. Tell me about that experience. What's that like?
I do. I love our military, and I love our veterans, and I don't think we've paid them enough respect. And so it's always gratifying for me. I take them hunting, I take them fishing, and I work with the Outdoor Dream Foundation that take life-threatening illness children on fishing trips. And after you do that, and you just fish by yourself, it's a bit anticlimactic.
I bet.
I mean, it's such a thrill to see these guys lose themselves in the day, forget about all their troubles, and some of them are amputees, and none of that seems to be relevant when we're in the boat or in the woods, and that's so cool, and it's very gratifying, and I enjoy that a bunch.
Great. If you were to talk to your younger self, your 25-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, one, slow down a little bit. You know, when I was 25 years old, I fished like my hair was on fire.
Right.
And I couldn't prioritize my time because I was under the gun. Like literally, when I was 25 years old, there were 10,000 people trying to get about 10 jobs. There were about 10 guys on that top tier that was really making good money. And to stay up there when you got all that competition, you put too much emphasis on your business and not enough on your family. And if I was 25 again, I'd say, do all you can do, but prioritize your life, that you spend time with your wife and your children, and don't let your job run you. You run your job. My job ran me for probably 15 years. And one day I realized it. But I wish I had realized that at 25 instead of 40.
Gotcha. That's good advice. Have you ever felt, one of the things we talk about studying way of success or setbacks, and I don't call them failures, I call them setbacks or pauses, things of that nature. But there are points. Have you ever had a point you just feel like throwing in the towel? This is too much. I'm through with this. Heads you win, tails disaster. Have you ever had that scenario? And what kept you going?
I tell people, and we all want our kids to get great educations where they have lots of opportunities and options. In my life, I was a high school dropout. All I wanted to do is be successful at fishing. Fishing in the Bassmaster Classic, there's a lot of pageantry. But going across Lake Erie in 40-mile-an-hour winds in a downpour rain when it's 40 degrees outside, and it's life-threatening, and you're miserable. You're soaked to the bone. You're freezing to death, and you got 8 hours before you get back to the weigh-in. And you think, what am I doing? This is a terrible job. But I didn't have options. And I really honestly think had I had options, I would not have been as successful. Poverty is an incredible motivator.
Right.
It's incredible. I borrowed $10,000 on a 90-day note to start fishing. I had a bank note to pay. And I heard a lot of my competitors, they paid 40 places. I heard a lot of my competitors say, well, I'm in 38th place. I'm not going to cross Lake Erie today just to make a bottom check. Oh, I am. I'm going to cross it if I die. I got a bank note to pay, brother.
You're
bottom
all
check.
in.
Yeah.
You're all in.
Everybody said, well, I made the money more than any angler in the history of the sport. 78% of the time I made the money. I had to. I had a bank note.
Right.
And I didn't have options. Man, it's make it or die. It's kind of like a tightrope walker,
Right.
You fall, it's over.
Yeah. So in my seat, I get to meet a lot of interesting people. I meet a lot of people of wealth or influence. And the people who are preparing documents think about transferring their wealth, they always give them a pause. And they say, as much as I want to give them wealth, I want to give them the experience to get the wealth. How do you transfer experience? You've done it through fishing and time, but how do you recommend people today? And maybe they don't fish, maybe they have young children, or maybe they don't have quantity of time, but maybe they have some time. How should they invest in their children or other people in their life that are important?
Yeah, and that is so well said, how to invest. And the most difficult position a person can be in my opinion, is to have a lot of wealth and have children. That is tough. That is tough. I have seen so many trust fund kids that are unmotivated, unfulfilled, unhappy, and suicidal. It is a real challenge for a dad, a mom, a family to instill in those children the value of the dollar when it's so easy for them on the exterior because you've worked and you've been successful. So it is a complete, absolute investment in your children. You've got to engage. To have a lot of resources is very demanding because it is just like the 10,000 people wanting the 10 jobs. There's 10 million avenues that people are trying to take away what you have. So it's a battle.
Right.
And it occupies your time.
Right.
But those kids, you got to do it. You got to engage them. And I don't think you can successfully transfer to them stocks and bonds and real estate and wealth without training them and having them be a part of the process that manages them. And if you throw them to the dogs, the worst thing you could do, in my opinion, is give a kid 25 years old a lot of inheritance. Mm-hmm. That's a bad deal. Mm-hmm. You're stripping him. I mean, he's there. He's never going to be able to build a foundation, especially if he's got a dividend check coming in every month for $300,000. Why in the world is he going to go out here and work for $10,000?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
It's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Warren Buffett gave his children $1 million when they were younger, and I remember thinking how awful of a human being he must be to be that wealthy and do that. And now, as the older you get, the perspective you get, that was a very wise thing to do. So how do you bring people involved? We have people in business that want to bring them in the business. You bring your children fishing. One man I talked to said he lets his children fail. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, how do you do that, and how do you recognize that there's a greater purpose? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, and I tell when I talk about hunting with my kid, my two oldest boys, Billy and Hank Jr., they loved to hunt, but we didn't have anything. And I would take a climbing stand and I would nail a board in a tree below my climbing stand and make them sit on that board. Mm-hmm. And they'd sit there for hours and hours and hours. And I think they're going to hate this sport. They love it. My later children, I made it easy for them. Mm-hmm. Man, we had office chairs and enclosed blinds.
Right.
They can take it or leave it.
Interesting.
It is so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's we try to make it too easy, and that's we're all guilty of that.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And it's backfired on us.
Right. I don't know anybody.
Hasn't worked.
I don't know anybody who hasn't worked very hard, recognized the struggle and the pain they went through to get there, who doesn't want to save the next group the pain and the struggle. But the pain and the struggle is what turns the caterpillar into the butterfly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so interesting. And we talk about a lot in the book. We're talking about faith, family, fitness, finance, friends, and how do you have balance? But better than balance, how do you have harmony? And I think the word isn't balance, but it's how they all work together and live together. So as repair to close, what steps do you take to seek harmony in your life?
I try to engage my kids in my thought pattern, and what's really cool for me now. Hank Jr. is like 48 years old. Timmy's 38, so there are 10 years between my oldest and my youngest. My kids call me all the time for advice. Mm-hmm. I've got Billy selling commercial real estate. He calls me all the time. Dad, what do you think about this idea? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times he'll stop and say, wow, that is so enlightening. I never even thought of that. Man, thanks, Dad. Mm-hmm. That is the most gratifying as a father, to have kids in their 40s and 50s calling you and asking for your advice.
That's fantastic.
So I try to ask them advice also.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
My son Billy's taught me more about archery than anybody in the world.
Wow.
Things that I didn't understand, he would slow down and say, Dad, no, that's not right. You're wrong. You need brace height to be this. You need this. You need this. And he's right every time. You know?
No way. Wow.
So it's amazing, the interaction, and family's so important. It is so important. And at the end of the day, if you've got your family and you've got them all saved and on the way to heaven, it's all good. And if you don't, it don't matter how much you have.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Great. Well, thank you for being on Stuttering Way Success today.
Thank you, my buddy.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Stuttering Way Success with my special guest, Hank Parker.
Thank you, Erik.
Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir, buddy. Thank you.